What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. This is probably going to be one of my best videos that I'm doing. I'm really bringing someone on here that people wanted to hear from. But you know what? I'm going to let him tell his story because he can tell it a whole lot better than me. He's doing big things right now. You know, he's part of the Lorton movie that's out. He's got a couple books out, I believe. This brother's been through it, but Eon, tell the people who you are, where you're from, man, and talk a little bit about how you ended up in prison.
All right, man. First of all, thanks for having me on here. My name is Eon Williams. I'm an author from Washington, D.C. I did 17 years in prison, some in Lorton, the rest in the federal system. I went to jail. I was involved with a murder. When I was 16, I got charged as an adult. And I ended up getting 15 to life. I did 17 years on the 15 to life. While I was in prison, I did a number of things. I'm sure, man, you're going to talk about some of those in detail. But among other things, I honed the skill of writing. I wrote a few books. I actually wrote about 12 books under my name. I probably got about 20 books, and including people's other people's names. And then I got into the law library, man, and I wasn't as skilled as you were. And so me and you was just talking. I was impressed with that, but I was able to file me a 2241 amongst other things that I filed over and over again to challenge the United States Parole Commission. And I was able to get myself out of prison. And from there, you know, I'm out here right now and I'm still an author. I'm a youth mentor and I'm also a film producer at this point in time.
So you was a young man when you went to prison. Was Lorton the first prison you went to?
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid and Lorton was the only prison you could go to if you caught in a felony in Washington, D.C. and you wasn't sent to the federal system or you didn't come out of federal court.
So, you know, I'm not from D.C., but I heard a lot about the Lorton prison, you know, that whole thing over there. Definitely violent, definitely vicious, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you was to put some type of category or list of, you know, the most violent prisons in America, federal or state, Lorton would have to be up there somewhere. And if you do the history as far as, you know, people like you or other people who know how to research things in the law books, you know, there's a lot of legal cases and a lot of litigation that came out of Lorton to show you what type of things that happen down there, you know, from police being shot to people taking over the whole prison, escaping from the prison, to people running narcotics and prostitution rings out of the prison. Like, you know, it's the type of things movies are made of, and that's not to glorify.
You talk about the police. The police were shot at that prison?
Police have been shot, yeah. Yeah, you know, not in the later days when I was there in the 90s, but in the process of writing my book and in the process of working with my man, Kareem Mowat and Sean Branch on the Lorton Prison Tour documentary, you know, we just did a lot of research and a lot of wild things happen out of there. I mean, there's even stories of a hitman. Lorton had release programs where you could leave and go to work back in the day. You know, you got a story of a hitman that left out of prison and, you know, did hits and returned back to prison, and like stuff that happened there is Hollywood like.
Is that stuff outlined in your book, some of that stuff?
And Lorton Legends is what I was my attempt at a urban book with a historical background, because I was writing urban fiction at the time. It was real popular, especially for a person in prison that was able to get it out right. But I wanted to tell the story of Lorton, and I wrote the book when I was about 23, 24 years old. I really didn't feel like I had enough knowledge to write a nonfiction book, which I probably can do at this point. But what I did was all those stories that me and you talking about, and people talk about, and it's in the Washington Post or in the Federal Reporter, or any of those things. I put those stories in there as a historical background, but I wrote a fictional story about what guys from Washington, D.C. went through in the criminal justice system dating back to the late 60s.
There's a lot of people that are probably going to watch this episode, man, and I'm going to make sure I link your books and the movie and all that. And
Appreciate it.
A lot of people are interested in that whole DC crime wave and all the things that were happening down there. So, I mean, if they really want to know, you're the guy that they should be checking out what you got going on for sure. Let me ask you this. When you went in there as a young man, were you a little bit, I mean, your first day walking in there, were you afraid a little bit? Nervous?
Man, anybody say that they don't have some apprehension or fear, I don't know if I'm a believer, but let me speak for myself. Yeah, you know, you're 16, you're going into an adult prison. I was housed in a unit called North One. At the time, oh goodness. hold on. At the time when I went in there, all the guys who had big names and big charges and big cases and high profile cases was hold on. Let me see if I could close the window. Yeah, excuse me, my bad. I apologize for that. It's a nice day down here in DC. I had the window open. But yeah, so that was the thing. And then at the point in time, I hadn't done a whole lot of jail time before. A lot of my buddies had spent years and years and years in juvenile facilities. I had only spent months in juvenile facilities. So to be locked up in the DC jail at the time of the murder capital, yeah, it was a challenging situation for a person 16 years old facing 90 to life.
I'm glad that you said that, because sometimes you see some dudes are faking, man. They come on here and they're like, nah, man, I was ready. And for real, man, whenever you're walking into an unknown place, right, where there's criminals and there's violent people, man, you're always going to be nervous, and you should always be aware of what's going on, right?
I agree. I believe that for myself. But I have met people, like, for example, I was 16, but I met people that came in there that had already been in there over and over again. So, it's not their first time, but they came in with no fear because they understood the dynamics. It's almost like a person who played in the NFL for 10 years. They're not going to have the same butterflies as a rookie. So, I think that's how that go without putting no sugar or no shit on.
So when you get to Lorton, right, I know there's a lot of violence there. What's one of the worst things you've seen? One of the worst things you experienced?
One of the worst things I seen was in a place called the Wall, which is maximum security. So that's around like these modern day supermax type junks, or lockdown places. So you got a tier straight down the tier with a bunch of cells as a catwalk. So you got, in order to walk from cell 1 to cell 20, you got to walk down like a catwalk with all this razor wire and all these type of things there. So you kind of like confined when you're walking down this tier, depending on where you're coming from, whether it's recreation or it's medical or something like that. Even visitation, you in chains, handcuffs, and shackles, especially at that time. And I seen a dude, and this one thing that I learned to really be careful when you're walking down some of those tiers. But the dude had a knife on the end of a broomstick, so it's basically a harpoon. Stabbed the dude through the bars and was able to pin the dude against the catwalk that I'm telling you about. They got the razor wire, so you can't go nowhere. So we handcuffed behind him, the police scared to death. The dude, it's not an over and over thing. He done stuck him and now he got it. He just twisted him. And I seen that. And I understood that it was different because, I was in a lockdown place 23 hours a day. So when, people make a move on you, they got to be creative. And maximum security in Lorton, man, some of those guys, if they was trying to hurt you, they was the most creative people I've seen in my life.
I also want to ask you, being that you did a bunch of time, you're an extremely intelligent dude. I want to ask you a little bit about Cadillac and Chappelle, right, and the Tommy Silverstein thing. How do you think Tommy Silverstein was able to do that, man? To kill them dudes, man. If you
first and foremost, I wasn't even around at that time. So any information I'm giving you on that is secondhand information, right? And there's many, many stories of that. The ones, and I put an S on that plural. The ones that I choose to believe is from some people that was there. And when I say people that was there, shout out to people like, Lulu, Bailey L, Butch Woods, Big Naughty, men like that. And some of these men are still alive. They told me stories, and these dudes have, respectable backgrounds for 50, 60 years. Anyway, what I can say about it from what my belief is that, in a place like Marion, which is actually a more intense place than what I'm talking about Lorton, because you're on the Wall, you're in these same type of lockdown units under these same type of control statuses, administrative segregation, disciplinary segregation. Some people was on total separation, special handling, all these extreme statuses. And, when you're in places like that, remember I just said in Lord, you had to be creative. So, Marion, I think, they was federally creative and on a whole nother different type of tip with racist things going on, black or white. And, I feel like the answer to that question, I just feel like they had the ups that day. I think that's the best way I could say it. If it happened the way they said in the law books, if it happened the way that the homie said, whatever happened, they had to have the ups that day. And I'm quite sure that if the homies had the ups that day, they would have had to demonstrate the same way. You know what I mean? This killer be killed in there. So, I'm not going to sit on here and try to, make my homies seem to be bigger than anybody else. And I damn sure not going to bow down to nobody being bigger than nobody else. You've been in them Jones. It's almost like, man, on any given day, somebody could be the better person if they get the ups first.
No doubt. And that's why I asked you that, but there's a bigger reason, right? We're going to get into that in a second. But, I've been stabbed in federal prison. Like you said, that day the kid had the ups on me. I was walking up the steps and he hit me from behind. I didn't expect it, didn't know he was there. And sometimes things like that happen. And like you said, I mean, it could happen on either side. If they had the ups that day, Tommy Silverstein might not have spent 40 years locked in the hole. He might have been dead many, many years ago. And, from my perspective, man, like I said, I've been with Mia Mai. I was with Love in Lee County. I've been with a bunch of your homeboys, man. Good men, And I had learned something from Love, man. He told me this, and I always say this, right? And I got this saying from him. He said, men respect men. Because I actually had one of your homies as a cellmate. He was a little white dude named Tim, right? And Love took care of him like a little brother. And we was beefing a little bit. When you're cellies, man, sometimes you beef with your celly a little bit, right? And he had went to Love. Sure. And Love called me out there. He wanted to talk to me, man. He's like, look, man, men respect men. And I ain't going to lie to you. When Love called me out there, he's a serious dude. I'm like, oh, fuck, I got to go talk to this dude. So, but we ended up working out, and Tim stayed my celly after that for a whole nother year. But, the other thing I really want to touch on is because in federal prison, people don't understand. Sometimes they watch movies and they think it's like Camp Fed, and it's not. But, in far too many cases, man, we're too busy fighting each other, man. Blacks against whites, whites against blacks, blacks against Mexicans. When if we came together for a common good, I think we could achieve a whole lot more than what we're achieving. Do you believe that?
Yes, I'm a expound on that. But before we move on past that Cadillac thing, there's one thing I didn't put in there when you asked me that question that I always seem to put in there some type of way. I always look at the situation that it was two of them. A lot of people say Silverstein, but it was Silverstein and Fontaine. So trust me, if it was Cadillac and one other person against one of them, the circumstances would have been a whole nother ball game as well. So, it's playing for keeps. That's the last part I wanted to add on that. But for sure, I seen another one of your interviews where they was talking about getting the washers and the dryers taken out the joint, and the men said, nah, that they wasn't going for that. Just so happened two white guys that worked on facilities took the joints out. That's another example of how when the issue is a convict issue and it ain't a black or white or native or whatever you want to say, Migo, whatever type of situation, that's a scenario where as though all groups to have any say-so on that yard had to come to some understanding, putting dislike to the side, geographical stuff to the side, religious stuff to the side. So, in places like that and situations like that, you see what can happen. Yeah, and that story that y'all spoke about, the dudes got blown up, but they got blown up for bullshitting. But that's a prison politic thing for people who don't understand. Like, you can't go against the code, whether the code is a convict code or not. And also, if we, I don't know how many people, are aware, the Fred Hampton situation. I'm quite sure that you are. But one thing that made Fred Hampton real dangerous wasn't that he could lead many people at 21 years old. It was that he could join races and classes and ideologies. So, of course, I'm the type of dude to believe, man, we'll get a whole lot more done together than we get fighting each other.
And that's my point, man. Like I tell people all the time, I told you before we got started that I own a paralegal and prison consulting firm. I consider myself one of the best jailhouse lawyers in the federal system, right? But that's because I cared, man. And I tell people all that sometimes people make racist comments on my channel, whatever, but I say, man, I help more black dudes, man, get out of jail than any other race. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen plenty of young brothers, man, come and be like, yo, man, I need to get out of jail. And I'm like, well, you in school? No. Well, you got to get in there and get that GED. I'm going to help you for free. Get in there and do this. Do this alternative violence project seminar. Change your life, man, and just stop this vicious cycle of poverty and kids growing up without fathers, man. And I know you're on that stuff too, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I've been doing that for the longest. I mean, before I was doing it as an organized type of thing, I was just doing it for my little cousins, my little nephews, my little homies. But as time evolved and I've been home 12 years, I got to meeting different type of people through my writings and different things like that. And, some of these people took interest in my ability to be able to communicate and make some type of engagement with the youth. So, I've been doing that, and I do that for the youngest that's out here that never been in, and I do it for men that was on the joint and inside the joint just coming home, like, because we need assistance too. After 17 years, when I came home, I really couldn't find my way on my own. It was other men out here that wasn't getting paid, that wasn't helping nobody out, but they had love for me. So, I do that same thing, whether I'm getting paid for it or whether it was just a guy that I knew that just spent 28 years, 38 years. I mean, I got big homies like Coleman Bay and Willie Strickland and guys like that that done 47 and 51 years in prison. They come home, man. Some of those guys don't even know how to catch the train from A to B, let alone order Uber. So, everybody to get out, man, it's like me, we trying to help the other guys get out and stay out, man. It's a different day and time.
Definitely not easy. It wasn't easy for me when I got out. Me and you did about the same amount of time. I got out here and they said they had an iPhone for me or Google Pixel, I think was my first phone. And I'm like, this ain't no phone. This is a computer with a phone on it. Let me ask you this, because there's probably some young dudes watching this show, right? How many young dudes in prison and outside of prison have you seen throw their lives away? Have you seen dudes go in there with a little bit of time, 7 or 8 years, and end up with a life sentence?
Oh man, I seen it too many times. Remember, I went to jail young. A lot of people go to jail when they got a few more years on you. So when you're young, as the Supreme Court has agreed with science now, your mind is not developed until a certain age, 24, 25. Some of these experts saying 26 and 27. Nevertheless, if I went to jail at 16 and all my buddies was in it was 16 and 17, a lot of us made bad decisions. I got one buddy who just came home maybe 2 months ago. He did 28 years. He went to jail with something like 3 to 9. You dig? So, he caught a knife shot. He caught a murder. He had to make parole. Parole said, we going to parole you in 10 years, and then you start your murder time after that. I got another partner that went to jail, had a doable 19 in life. Although that don't sound doable to certain people. You and I know that if you get 19 in life, you don't want to do the whole 19, but it's a different number than life without parole or 6 years. But nevertheless, he had a 19 in life. And the type of things that occurred with us, we went to jail and he was 17, some type of way along the way. He made his way all the way to ADX. Situation happened in ADX. They charged him with the second murder in ADX history. And it was right at the time to make parole and then got a federal life sentence. You know what I mean? So sometimes the deck just gets stacked against us. You know what I mean? They place you in certain situations like, like that ADX situation that they placed my man in. They know it was volatile. They know it was hostile. He hadn't done nothing to get there, but just on his Lorton record and all the traveling around the country, picking up shots here and there, classification-wise, they sent him to ADX as his first stop. They don't hardly do that to people unless somebody got a big case like a Anthony Jones or a Pistol Pete. You know what I mean? Somebody where they make a big thing about it before they land it. Most of the time, you got to get to a compound, put some work in, or get caught up in some BS and then go there. But nevertheless, I got too many of my buddies right now that I'm trying to help get out of jail, or even just help their bid be a little bit easier, that went to jail and had numbers that they could do. And on the flip side of that coin, I've seen dudes go to jail. They got numbers, 2 life sentences, 3 life sentences, was never supposed to come home, went to jail and did what they supposed to do and got out at 15 or 20 without breaking no codes, without telling nobody, without no 5K1s.
Plenty of young dudes, man, sometimes, man, like you said, not just throw their lives away, but sometimes dudes are put in positions where, honestly, man, like the dude Troy Kell said, I quote him all the time, fuck their whole lives off, man. And sometimes you have to. Sometimes prison, there's circumstances, man, where you have to kill people in there, man. Or they're going to kill you.
And then sometimes you just don't know, and they don't care to educate you about it until you do it. Like, I met a lot of guys that came from Lorton after I had already been in the federal system for a second. Lorton, they closed all the way down to 2001. And Lorton, you get away with so much stuff. You might stab somebody, get away with it. And they came to the feds with that behavior, and they first stabbing, they got 7 years. They next stabbing, they got 9 years. You done got almost 20 years for 2 outbursts and temper tantrums.
Man, can you say that one more time so it can resonate with the young dudes that are watching this?
And I said, man, sometimes these dudes come from other prisons where as though they don't punish you the same way. So my buddies came from Lorton and they was kind of wild. They came to the feds when they first, this one particular guy that I'm thinking about, because I seen dudes take cops and get 18 months and 2 years. But on them serious stabbings, I ain't talking about them scratches in the child hall to check them, man. I'm talking about a butchering like you was talking about when a dude got shot. You might get 5, 6 years, you take a cop on one, next shit, it's a federal thing. You catch another stabbing 2, 3 years later, boom, you got 8, 9 years. So now you got almost 20 years for a temper tantrum.
20
Extra years, because I'm saying most of the time, where you coming from, where I'm coming from, right? I ain't talking about these guys that go to federal court and it's in their states, right? And they can get this type of number or get that type of number. Everything that we do in Washington, D.C., we end up in federal court. So most of my little homies coming to jail for some type of gun violence. That's what they charge most of us with. 90-some% of the people convicted in Washington, D.C. is Black. Regardless of people saying that it ain't Chocolate City no more, regardless of the population going from 70 to under 50, the people that come through them courtrooms is Black people.
What was one of the worst federal prisons you ended up going to after you left Lorton?
Worse, to be honest, I don't think I went to any of the ones that was quote unquote supposed to be the worst, right? But I did go to Leavenworth when it was a point in time, and Leavenworth was an older prison, as you know, and it was a penitentiary at the time, and it had all type of other boundaries and orders that was in place for decades. And just so happened in the time that I had the misfortune of going there, it was a time where they were sending bus loads of 40 and 40 and 40 at DC there. So it was a lot of tension there. It was almost an overcrowded. They had to send a lot of people out of there. And it was a lot of tension going on with where we could sit at, where we could eat at. DC guys already had a area, for the, I mean, people that's watching your show should pretty much understand that you sit a certain place, you play a certain place on the rec yard, you jog a certain place, you know what I mean? And we were overrunning it. So we got into a lot of little problems out there, and I ended up getting shipped out of there real fast and ended up in Lee County.
I don't know if you could talk about it, but if you can, you ever had to put any work in?
I mean, I done had to defend myself. I ain't really known for putting no whole bunch of work in, right? As a Jew in the juvenile block, I think where we come from is like a gladiator school. Everybody done hit some. So I got a couple stabbings. I'd have been stabbed, you know what I mean? I'd have been stabbed in a knife fight. I'd have been stabbed with my back turned. I'd have tried to escape from CTF, which is part of DC jail. So we basically did knock the police out, took the keys, took the radio, opened all the doors, hit the wall, didn't get away. I mean, as far as in the feds, when I came through the feds, it was a little bit different. I heard a lot of people when they was talking about DC or your show, a lot of them mentioned the numbers. Everywhere I've been, we had so many numbers in the feds. I never really felt. I mean, I'm not a cocky or arrogant or a bully or a tyrant, but I never felt intimidated. Then I also had another little a perk for me that I was not only was I was from Washington D.C., I was also Muslim. So everywhere I went, I had a comrade, I had an eye watching me, I had somebody assisting me, somebody that knew a little bit more than me, had been around a little bit more than me. So all these places that people go and they say they dangerous. I'm aware of the danger, but everywhere I got off the bus, some of my homies that was there they was kind of solid guys.
I did a video and some dudes chimed in. Some dudes act like they're from DC when they write and all that. And I don't really, listen, I've been there, man. I spent almost 18 years of my life in there. So I know how your homies are, right? There's a lot of good men from DC, man. I'm just going to put that out there. Some dudes that are ignorant, they write stupid shit, whatever. But there are a couple things that I want to clarify with a dude like you. I wrote about the top 5 most dangerous gangs in federal prison. And people are like, man, why ain't the DC dudes on there? And I said, because DC.
Who was the top 5? I didn't see that video of yours. You mind telling me who was the top 5 that you decided on?
I had the Serranos on there, the SAC, the white dudes, the SAC, Soldiers of Aryan Culture. I think I had the Texas Syndicate on there. I think the ABs were on there. But no real black gangs, and this is my reason for it, right? In the prisons that I've been in. Number one, I've been in prisons.
You ain't had a MA on that?
Who?
Mexican Mafia had an MA on that?
Oh yeah, they were number one. The Mexican Mafia and the Serranos, number one.
Go ahead.
To me. So I said, look, man, when I've been in Big Sandy where there was only 8 Crips. I've been in Big Sandy where there's only 20 Bloods, right? But there's 500 Serranos. And I said, hey, look, man, DC ain't a gang, man. And I said, they're men. They don't just go out and viciously attack their own people. Like I said, man, you guys got leaders, man. You guys got men, like people like Love and me and mine. It ain't like they had a shot caller, but when there was an issue, them dudes handled it like men. They didn't just go out and be like, yo, we're going to brutalize one of our own people. And that's why I said, look, man, these dudes ain't a gang. People don't understand that. They're not out here. Like the Mexican Mafia dude, if you lose a kite, I was with a dude, man. He lost a kite. And they wanted to kill this dude because he lost a kite from the big homie. If someone loses, one of my friends loses a letter that I tell him, hey, man, get this over there, and it's a mistake, man. We're not trying to kill the dude, but these dudes will kill you. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's a fact.
I just don't feel like DC's a gang, man. I felt like that,
DC ain't a gang, you know what I mean? However, back according to my big homies and my older homies, right? In the late 60s and the early 70s, a different breed of guy came out of Washington, D.C. to the federal system. Before that, you had dudes like William DeLoach, Vernon Cooper, these some hell of a older names, right? They were guys from Washington, D.C. that Lorton couldn't deal with, and sometimes they did get a case that came out of U.S. federal court in D.C., so they had U.S. code before Superior Court was created, and I'll break all that down later, but The U.S. federal court in D.C. had a court for general sessions. I like to call it riffraff, armed robbery, murder, gambling, pistol charges. You're not going to get all your federal stuff, so they had to deal with that. And that's a reason why I wish they created Superior Court, but we're going to that later. But nevertheless, those were only was only a few guys out of Washington, very few out of Washington at that time. But in the late 60s and early 70s, around the same time, Barry Mills and the boys came from California to the federal system. It could have been a plan, but we don't go get into no conspiracy, but a whole lot of serious, violent, black, civil rights, black power brothers came from Lorton to the federal system. And a lot of rules, all of them saying, no disrespect to none of the homies that was there, but they said that the white guys had an iron fist on it. Black people couldn't sleep certain way. All the stuff that was going on in the streets was going on in there. Blacks couldn't sleep here. Blacks couldn't sleep in this dorm. If black went in this dorm, this was done. And, according to my knowledge, the blacks from D.C. was one of the first groups to say, fuck that. And, people can fact check that if they want to do that. Other strong blacks came in later. But remember, the strong blacks from most places were in state prisons. So if you understand the dynamics of what's going on, you can understand that history part too. But, nevertheless, when these other guys came in, the feds labeled them as DC blacks, which already is a racist term. So they said that problem group right there is only the black people from Washington, which also tells you that they was only locking up black people from Washington. So that's where the whole DC black thing really first came. But as far as how we move, if you disrespect one person, you're disrespecting everybody. So I can understand why people would think that it's a gang or say it's a gang, because that's how we've been known to move.
Hey, listen, man, I respect that, right? And it's like this. If you're oppressing me, I'm the type of dude, man, if I feel like you're oppressing me, guess what? I ain't the baddest man in the world, but I'll tell you what, you're going to respect me or we're out of here. You're going to kill me, I'm going to kill you, or we're leaving the jail. You ain't going to, I had a dude on the other day, man, he was a Paisa, kind of new to the system, didn't know much, and he said that he was in a jail in Texas where they told the white dudes, this is the black shower and this is the Mexican shower. You guys can't shower, right? And I'm like, what? And some dude's like, he don't know what he's talking about. But I can say from personal experience that I've been in a situation where they didn't say we couldn't shower, but they tried to tell us what time we were allowed to shower because they were washing the showers in the Oklahoma County jail. When they put you in that hole.
I was about to ask you where you was at, because in the federal system, other white guys had already paved the way for that.
No doubt.
So I was getting ready to say, wherever he was at, it had to be a state zone, a detention zone, or some type of jail, because, other white guys had already sacrificed for shit like that to not happen. Well, same way with black guys in any other group. They didn't already sacrifice, for the guys that can sit down at this TV and that TV and watch the TV and change the channel. Some of them might think that they just some thorough motherfuckers right now, but in all actuality, somebody sacrificed for that group to sit there and watch that TV.
Dude was in a Texas jail, right? And when I came through transit, I was in a unit where, man, there might have been 5 black dudes and 50 Mexicans and 3 white dudes, right? And the Mexicans tried to tell us when we could shower because they were cleaning the shower. And I said, look, man. And I went back to what love taught me. Men respect men, right? And I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to clean the showers these days. You're going to clean the showers these days. And the black dudes can clean the shower these days. And we're showering when we want to shower. And that's how we settled it. And really, I thought it was going to be something where we were probably going to get fucked up in there. But, I'm grateful that they respected that. And we cleaned the showers and we showered when we wanted. So there's been oppression, man, since the beginning of time. And for the DC black, and they say, oh, well, the DC blacks. Well, guess what? Yeah, maybe the DC blacks are known as the DC blacks because they wasn't taking no shit. Like, yo, we're not going for this shit, man. And we can go back to, New York City and the Bloods and Rikers Island and how that thing started where, they were being oppressed. They're like, fuck that, we're coming together and you ain't going to do this shit. People get, sometimes there's some tough dudes, man, are going to step up and say, yo, this ain't what it's going to be. So I understand the movement. I understand the history. I don't just come on here and talk the talk. I mean, I experienced it, man. And I think life experience is the best teacher, right? And I've seen it, man. And I've experienced it.
Hey, let me add one more thing to that, though, right? Because a lot of times people that haven't been to where we've been from get it misconstrued when we say tough guys, and they think that it's tough all just on muscle. It's a whole lot of guys, my homies that I'm really shouting out from D.C., but from all over the whole system, right? That's gotten laws changed, policies changed. That's some tough shit too, because you got to stand up to the administration. You got to stand up to the BOP. You got to stand up to the powers that be. For an example, in my book, Lorton Letters, and a lot of times when I'm quoting and trying to make the comparison of, people standing up and rioting and burning the whole jail down, the religious freedoms that people have in federal prison come from a case that was actually filed out of Lorton's Youth Center So, it's other things that it come with just man standing up for something. At one point in time, you had a lot of blacks that was in prison that was Nation of Islam, that was Moorish Americans, and every meal had pork in it. It's dudes from Lorton and dudes from Texas as well. They got some of them laws changed. So, being tough ain't always just being able to break somebody's jaw, put a knife through their stomach and make it come out their back.
And that was my point earlier about us fighting with each other when we should be working together. I read a little bit out of the New Mexico riot book, The Devil's Butcher Shop, and I told people all the shit that was going on back then, all the shit that was going on in Attica, like you said, men sacrificed for the shit that we got now, right? And slowly we're losing it all. It's almost all gone. But if they don't take, you're an educated brother, so if they don't learn a lesson from history, man, what these people aren't seeing is all the shit they're taking, all the shit they're doing with oppression. It's all getting ready, and I'm not promoting this, but it's getting ready to happen again. I believe it will happen again because we're getting to the point now where
I can't disagree with you. You know what I mean, and everything that you're saying is, I see it that same way. And also to add to it, I don't know his name. I don't keep up with the names that much until something happens, right? But the director of the BOP was either removed or resigned. Part of the reason that they used for was that dangerous understaffing and outbreaks of violence that they couldn't control. So, if you just use those two topics of right there why the BOP had to change leadership, it show you that something is out of control and it could damn sure be going back to how it was. And for people who don't know, like the BOP is on constant lockdown now, at least on the penitentiary level. The last time that they had problems like that where they could control it, these have places like ADX I built. These have places like the new joint in Illinois, which is basically for real, in my mind, is a central ADX. They then made Lewisburg a defunct East Coast ADX. So under the guise of the people out here that don't know what's going on, the federal system is showing you what's busting at the seams and the racket of shit is coming back. So I just add them facts to what you're saying about how you feel about it. And if you use your GPS to get from point A to point B one time, and you got to go to point A to point B another time, you're going to recognize some of the landmarks you see.
Let's touch on a touchy subject, right? We're out here in the street, man, and we see people get killed by cops, right? We see a lot of African Americans getting killed by cops, and the people are coming out in droves, right? And they're protesting. I mean, the George Floyd thing, they're protesting, they're doing all this stuff. But the one thing that really bothers me is that there are people, man, and I'm just calling it based on facts, right? There's plenty of black men that are being killed in federal courtrooms across this country every single day with life sentences, right? And I think that people should be out here marching for that shit. Because, yeah, all right, George Floyd, man, he got killed. But, man, we got dudes every day in every city, in D.C., in New York, in California, in Chicago, man. Even nonviolent drug offenders. I got a black dude right now. I'm working on his case. He pled guilty. The lawyer told him, you're going to get 20 years. They gave him life, man. Who the hell pleads guilty to life?
Yeah, the sentencing hearing. They gave him life at the sentencing hearing based on relevant conduct.
100%. So this man didn't know. He thought he was getting 20 years, and now he's got a life sentence, man. So
Dick Durbin and another one of those people, we actually trying to support it from D.C. As D.C. they've been effing us over since the induction of time because it's taxation without representation. We don't have no vote in Congress for anybody that's up on that. So what we've been doing, we've been trying to circumvent some of those games, and being as though D.C. lies in between two states, Maryland and Virginia, and a lot of the residents from both states are being punished by those sentencing guidelines, especially that 30-year or 40-year practice of using unconvicted, dismissed, and other criminal acts to sentence you and enhance you in the end. And I've been working on a case and helping my man with a case of mine by the name of Anton White, who got a co-defendant by the name of Eric Hicks. And they got one of those big cases like that, but we've been using those same protests that you're saying about trying to galvanize people around it. And education is a big part of it because I learned that in the process of it, a lot of people in D.C. that was, supportive of some of these things, like you say, these George Floyd movements, they are supportive of some of these things. They had to be educated that your local D.C. politicians can't even help you with a resident that's in U.S. federal court sent to the BOP. So we have no one to cry to. Eleanor Holmes Norton is our shadow senator. All she can do is really, man, make, have an opinion on things. She doesn't even have a vote in any of these things to change our life here in D.C. With people like you and people like other people who had loved ones in prison, they need to support that bill. And I don't want to misquote the title of the bill. I'm sure you can find it, or I can send it to you after I talk. But there's a push for people to get rid of sentencing people for things they have not done, they have not been convicted of, or they were acquitted of before. Dick Durbin is one of the names that's on that bill. It's somebody named Grassley.
Chuck Grassley out of Iowa.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that can help that matter, in my opinion, is to change the laws and to put that in effect. Like you said, when you was talking about the 2255 for the first step back or all those things, when Congress didn't intend to sentence you 2 times and this and that for, what was that, the 922G? What was that for?
924C stacking. That's what I had.
924C stacking. Congress didn't intend that. So, Congress may have intended the 100-to-1 ratio, and then they dropped it to this 18-to-1 ratio. However, Congress didn't intend for people to be sentenced without the jury having a say so. The jury is supposed to be the most powerful body in the whole damn country. So
say this.
I ain't gonna go too far into that, but I agree with what you're saying, and that's a big issue.
Let me say this, right? Like in the beginning, you said no taxation without representation, and I hope people caught that. I mean, as a felon, if you're not allowed, in some states you can't vote. So if I can't vote, then why am I paying taxes? That's what he's talking about for the viewers, right? And the other thing that
no, that's part of it. But in DC, you have no federal vote. Taxation without representation is on our tags. DC has no writing vote in Congress like everyone else that has a state, because we are not a state. So yeah, ultimately, individually, that's correct. But for anybody law-abiding or not, you don't have a federal vote in Congress if you're from Washington, D.C.
You know what? I knew that, and it passed my mind, so I missed it, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're also talking about acquitted conduct. What people don't understand, these young brothers that are watching right now, let me explain this to you so you know, all right? You're sitting in a drug house, you're selling dope for someone. When I say dope, it could be crack, it could be heroin, it could be whatever. They bust you, they find 52 grams. They charge you with 50 grams or more crack cocaine. You go to trial, you lose trial, and now that the government says, well, you know what? He's been selling crack cocaine for the last 5 years, Judge. So if you add it all up, even though we don't have it, you add it all up, we think he sold 25 kilos of crack. So instead of it being 121 to 151 months on the guideline chart, he's pretty much, advisory guideline range of automatic life, Judge. And you should get this man life, and they will give you life. They don't give a shit if you're 16. They don't care if you're 20. They don't care if you're 70. They don't care if your mother's dying. They don't care. They will send you to prison until the sun burns out, which means you will never get out of prison.
I mean, in the hypothetical you just put together is so good. Like, I got a partner between 19 and 20 years old. He sold undercover approximately 59 grams of crack cocaine, a little bit more than 2 ounces. The ghost drugs added up to 21 keys. Like you said, he ain't sold nobody 21 keys. They multiplied this and multiplied that and said you did this every month for 5 years. You sold 21 keys. And that's legal right now. The ghost drugs, like, you got to school the people to the ghost drugs, because people be thinking, oh, I got a stash here, oh, I got a stash here. If the informant says he bought a key from you once a week for a month, that means you sold 4 keys a month, times 12, times 5 years. That's your ghost drugs.
Absolutely ridiculous. The other thing that you just touched on, you talked about the 924C stacking. The first step back, what they did was they changed that, and people don't realize that you could be in a drug conspiracy and the cops bust a house, but they let you go. That first gun they find in there, which in my case was a .22 rifle, I got 5 years. The next house they busted, they left me in the street when they could have locked me up and took me to federal court, but they said, nah, we don't want to take them to federal court. I got another house. They busted that house. They found a 12-gauge shotgun. Now they wrap me up. They take me to the federal building. They say, we're giving you 10 years for the drugs. We're giving you 5 for the first gun. And we're giving you 25 for the second. And they all have to run wild. And I ended up sentenced to 40 years. What the First Step Act did was this. They said, you know what? Those laws are wrong. The 924C, this isn't what we intended. We intended it to be 5 years. And if you didn't learn your lesson, you went to prison, got out, you didn't learn your lesson, now you can get the second 25. But we didn't intend for it to be stacked all throughout the same conspiracy and the cops just to allow you to stay out there. And there's some brothers that got 105 years for it. Congress came back and said, this is wrong. You should only get 5 years for each gun, right? They said it's wrong, but
right.
How many people are still sitting in prison because they didn't make it retroactive? How can they say that a law is wrong, but yet we're not going to make it retroactive? And it disproportionately, and I've wrote numerous articles about this in the Prisoners Legal News, the Criminal Legal News. When I got out of jail, man, there was organizations that hit me up like the 924C, Mercy Me. They were like, man, we read all your articles. We thought you were black. Because I wrote all these articles in the Criminal Legal News about this law, and they're like, damn, man, we ain't know you was white. But them articles that I wrote featured, the disparities for African Americans, and you're telling the people that the shit is wrong, but yet there's numerous African Americans still sitting in prison based on these laws, man. Absolutely.
I mean, African Americans are proportionally a bigger number, but they doing that to everybody. Anybody who got those cases where the government can finagle and use no retroactivity, they're using it. But for sure, all the people that I know, and most of my buddies are black, all the people that I know in a situation like that, and even for the arguments that people, and I can't believe some of the arguments, even for the arguments for the people that say that, for like the marijuana laws, right? A lot of people say, oh, they crying that such and such is not retroactive. Well, so what? It wasn't legal then. Okay, that's a action that had been outlawed and made criminal when you broke the law and you sold weed, and now we can make an argument for it. But when the Congress and the United States government say, no, this law is draconian, this law is wrong, this law is racist, I don't see how anyone on either side can have an argument. If you're saying that it's not done and it shouldn't be done to any other person, then you should rectify what other people that have been done wrong by it. I mean, that should be common sense. Like, that's not even in the same argument with the people who say, why the weed guy still in jail? Do you agree?
I 100% agree that you can't say that something's wrong, but it don't affect the people that have been suffering under
it.
Yeah,
and I mean, I ain't trying to lead the guys out, the weed guy. I'm just saying this is a big topic. I think that the weed guy should come home too. Let me make that clear. You know what I mean? But for sure, if a law was enforced in 65 and in 75, the climate changed, like in 65 and 55, you can still say nigga on Capitol Hill. You dig what I'm saying? You can't say nigga publicly on Capitol Hill now. So that conduct has changed. So if we send some people in the 60s or the 80s, because most of these people who are having these problems committed crimes in the 80s and the 90s too. But if these people committed these crimes back to whenever they changed the laws and all that, man, it don't make sense. Nobody in society, even people who don't understand the criminal culture, should understand that people are being punished illegally. People say, oh, they crying. I'm not crying, and none of my buddies I know is crying. All my people are saying is, and that's black or white, I got white buddies too, saying that if the law is the law of the land, the law should apply with me. For everybody to say law and order mean that, I'm saying, the little man is protected as well.
This is the thing, Eon, right? This is the thing. We're going to give people a little lesson real quick, right? It's easy for people like Joe Biden to talk about, well, we're going to fix this weed law. No, Joe, that ain't the only problem. And Cory Booker challenged everybody on the stage, man, during the Democratic debates, and he said, we just passed the First Step Back law. I'm challenging everybody on this stage today that if you're elected president, we didn't make that stuff retroactive. I'm challenging everybody to grant clemency to all of these people that did not benefit from the First Step Back, even though we said the law was wrong. The only person that didn't agree was Joe Biden, yet he's our president and ain't done shit. So,
well, I don't want to take the opportunity to bash Joe Biden, right? Because everybody else has. But I know that me, Anna minds this, she's into all this, you got to change, you got to give people this and people that. So I tell her all the time, them 94 laws that sent all us to jail, that was when we was kids, and these super predator, Joe Biden wrote that. Joe Biden wrote the 87 Jones. Joe Biden wrote something before that. So a lot of these laws that crush dudes, especially blacks with crack and gun violence, and for the people who say that, oh, they had to do something, they had to do this. Even after they passed the laws, the murder rate didn't subside until much later, after they had still been mass incarcerating. So, when you say Joe Biden didn't, you say he was the only one that didn't agree with Cory Booker on that matter, right?
Yeah, because if he did, everyone had clemency.
It's the same old Joe for me. You know what I mean? And like I said, anybody, who don't agree with that, all you got to do is look at the 94 laws. And then there's another one that I'm not right now on the top of my head. I had to look back at it. He's authored some other laws that people don't even say he did that was just as detrimental. I don't want to misquote him, so I ain't gonna say it, but he's authored some other stuff that's been as detrimental as the 94 laws.
Well, listen, man, it's definitely a little legal lesson for the people, right? But before we go, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing in the street right now. I know you got, that movie, man. I think that thing sold out a bunch of times. what you guys
Yeah,
got going
shout out
on.
to Kobe Mowai 100 Films and Sean Branch, man. Those Kobe really put it all to Kareem, my fault. They twin brothers. Kareem basically put it all together. So that's the Lorton Prisoner Term. We done sold out 4 weeks in a row for that. In our one local theater where we was viewing it, we was out selling Spider-Man.
Wow, ain't that something? I was
Yeah.
selling Spider-Man. I want
Yeah,
people
in
to.
that one theater, I keep having to say that now because I said it the other day and I seen somebody repeat it. Said, "Man, those out selling Spider-Man." Never that. Where we are, it outsold Spider-Man.
Shit, hey, it is what it is, right? You're doing big things though, man. How many books have you wrote?
I have about 12 under Eon Williams. You know, Fast Lane, Hellraiser, Honey's Money Ain't Everything, which is based on a true story. Never Lay Down, which is based on a lot of stuff that we talking about right here. Dudes getting them life sentences and those RICO laws and ghost drugs. Lorton Ledger is one of my more popular books. And then, I got a couple other ones. I got also some stuff for the e-readers. I wrote a short story called The Godfather, Eddie Mathis. Oh, you should check that out too yourself. You might like that. You might even want to interview him.
No doubt. I'm definitely gonna buy that Lorton book for sure. I'm gonna have I'm not real good, man, with ordering stuff and all that, so I'm gonna have my wife do it. But you'll see my order on there for sure, man. Like I said, I know you're mentoring. You mentored some brothers in prison. What message would you give to the? I want you to talk to the young man that's in D.C. right now that was just like you, that was 16 years old, man. He's on the wrong path right now. What would you say to that brother, man?
I mean, without, being too long-winded, I like to be sure and speak their language when I talk to them. But in whatever way that I would engage them, I would definitely always make the point. I don't know if it would be these words, but it's always, man, to make your best move, your next move, and think before what you do. I remind a lot of my homies, man, it took me like 7.5 minutes to kill a person and wound another person in my ignorance at 16. It took me 17 years to get out of prison. It took me 10 more years to get on parole. So not to make it about me and my little feelings after I did some type of things that I did when I was in the streets, but what I made a decision to do that took less than 10 minutes cost me almost 30 years of my life. I just asked them to try to imagine that. But also remembering when I was 16, it was hard to imagine 30 years of my life. So, it's a one day at a time thing. And the best thing that I can do for any young brother is try to assist them. I hold their hand if that's what they're into, on a manly big homie tip. But what they need is information. Like I seen a young the other day didn't even know that on his second gun charge that, they could give him more time if they take him to federal court. I seen other people that didn't know that all they charges that they had from a juvenile, if they go to federal court, is going to burn them of his sentencing. So you can't tell a grown man nothing, and a lot of youngins believe that they grown men at the time, and you got to respect them. So what I do is I give them all the information I can give them at that time, man, and hope that it'll make some type of difference. Even if it don't make that type of difference until they go in and they do have to suffer from this and suffer from that, at least they'll still be aware of what the consequences is, and maybe they'll be able to learn from it on the next go round.
Man, definitely a good message, man. And you know what, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to people that are educated, people that can give a good message. And you know what, man, you're probably one of the most educated dudes that I talk to on here, man.
Thanks,
and
man.
I respect you. I respect your movement. And for real, man, I'm with it, man. The weather's getting better, man. Anybody wants to put something together, man, we can go down there to DC, man. We can get some big people down there. We can put a stage down there. I'm willing to, help pay some of that cost, man, to do whatever we got to do, man, and get down there and do them marches for the brothers that are being killed in courtrooms across the nation, not just in the streets, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm definitely about that. That's one thing I did respect when I watched the show, you know what I mean? That law and you to help other people, man, like they say in The Godfather, you know what I mean? I don't need more soldiers with guns. I need more lawyers with briefcases, man. And that's what I need. Like, I need somebody to help me help my men. I can send them all the money in the world. I could go visit their girl and drop something off all of it, but they need to be out here.
Listen, man, I'm going to close the show, man. Again, I appreciate you. I thank you. I'm going to tell everybody, man, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video, check this brother's books out, check out that movie, man. You're in DC. Hopefully that thing goes big, but we're out, man. With respect, until tomorrow, we're gone.